How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sunday, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern, Saturday mornings with Jim Valley, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern, Sundays with Andrew Zarian. And it's Halloween on this show. Thursday. You know what that means? Sempervive better have his costume when we come back from the break. We got a lot of news to talk about here today. And not only that, but we're going to have a special guest, which I'll tell you about here in a while. But yesterday was Fright Night Dynamite. So we can tell you about that here today on the show, as well as all of the shows we got coming up this weekend. What is with this hair everywhere? Driving me nuts. I'm doing my best here. We got SmackDown coming up on Friday night. Of course, Crown Jewel is coming up on Saturday. So we'll give you the full lineup for that show. And there is an injury. We actually got a lot of injuries to talk about. AEW and WWE injuries. So we're going to get into those after the break. Plus an update on the WWE ID deals. There are half dozen, slightly more wrestlers currently under ID deals. And we're going to tell you what the situation is if somebody gets an offer from somewhere else. So that'll be after the break. Then the injury update. And then the rest of the news, including NXT ratings and a former WWE wrestler has retired. And the Dynamite report. We'll talk about Dynamite as well. Final segment of the show. Our old friend Aria Whitner is going to be on the program. They've written a new book, 40 Years of Pay-Per-View. Literally going back and reviewing every single pay-per-view. And book one is now available in paperback on Amazon. 1985 through 1990. This is going to be a long series of books. Back in a moment with more Observer Live. I am so disgusted right now.
Why is that? You saw a mirror?
Show Mike. Look at this. You had one job. One job! And that was to find a costume. Couldn't even do it. You don't have a sheet? Can't you put a sheet over your head or something?
Oh, yeah, because that's what I want. The chat saying, hey, look, he's dressed like a Klansman or something like that.
Not a Klansman outfit, but like get a sheet and put some holes in it. For eyes, like you're a ghost. You seriously don't have a lucha mask?
I was looking for one, actually, and I thought I knew where they were, and no. And I get a Mysterio mask and a Mystico mask somewhere. And
here, I'm going to make you a deal. I'm going to give you a 5-minute break from the show to see if you can find a lucha mask. I'll just talk about the first bit of news here, which you ain't going to care about anyway.
All right, fair enough.
Just a bunch of injuries. You go find a mask. The chat is so disgusted right now. Golly. Dom's got a costume on. He's a radio producer. Right, Dom?
You're damn right. And I have a Plinko shirt on pretending to be a Price is Right contestant today also.
Wow, a Plinko shirt. I've got a Chehalis Flying Saucer Party shirt. I don't know why. Actually, my workout shirt. All right. Well, while this guy's trying to find a mask, should probably be wearing every day. All right. First, a bunch of injuries to talk about here. Former AEW Tag Team Champion Nick Jackson has been working with a separated shoulder. Has been bothering him for weeks. News comes from Bryan Alvarez. Hey, that's me. Yeah, I did report that. I don't know when he got hurt, but apparently it's been a while. And if you guys saw the tag match with Private Party at the pay-per-view, and then the tag match they had last night, which was absolutely... Last night was like even better than the pay-per-view, and the pay-per-view match was great. He did that entire match like with a separated shoulder. And if you've ever had a separated shoulder, I mean, you can work through it, but I mean, can't even lift his... I think he obviously can lift his arm, but can't lift weights, anything like that. So, yeah, he did both of those matches with a separated shoulder. So, there's that. And then, also, Dave reported last night, Bandito is healed. He actually injured his wrist in June of 2023. It is currently basically November of 2024. So he's been gone like 17 months with this broken wrist because apparently they gave him surgery. It did not heal properly. He had a second surgery and is now finally able to return. So he should be back at some point here. But that is the update on Bandito. And keep in mind, by the way, Adam Cole completely shattered and destroyed his ankle. They had to put like a cadaver, they had to, not a full cadaver obviously, but they had to do they had to do a very, very intense 2 surgeries, I believe. It was multiple surgeries. And he was only at a little more than a year. So, yeah, 18 months out with a wrist injury for Bandito. And then this, Rhea Ripley will be out for an undisclosed amount of time. They did an angle on NXT where she showed up because she's friends with Zarya, and I believe she even said that she knew Zarya's dad. And this, by the way, is a slow build to Zarya going to the main roster to eventually feud with Rhea Ripley. So kind of planting some seeds right now. That's the long term. But, she was there wishing all the baby faces luck. And then they cut outside a little later, and there's Liv Morgan and Raquel. They're walking off the set with, baseball bats or whatever. And they zoom in, and there's Rhea Ripley covered in blood. Yes, they're doing blood again. I'm sure it was fake Halloween blood, but she's all bloody and laid out and dead. And apparently she suffered a broken, or I guess fractured orbital bone. And this was the angle to write her off for a while. So she actually, she did a storyline a little bit. She did the appearance earlier in the show. So, you can't really see it, but, I cracked my orbital bone, and it sucks. So she's out of action for a while, and that was a storyline injury to put her out of action. So when she'll be back, I don't know. Maybe able to wrestle with one of those face masks on, but I guess we shall see. And speaking of, Liv Morgan has signed a new 5-year deal with WWE. She wants to stay with WWE as long as the company will have her. She was on Logan Paul's podcast and talked about a lot of things, including signing a new 5-year deal. My 5-year plan is WWE, she said. That's my 5-year plan. So she has re-signed, and apparently elsewhere in that interview, she talked about, I forget why she was arrested, but it was, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, maybe a year ago or whatever. And she said that when she took the mugshot, the officer taking the mugshot said, "This mugshot is going to go viral. It's one of the best I've ever taken," or something to that effect. So talked about that on the podcast as well. Then we've got a couple of notes on WWE ID, which every time I bring this up, everybody comes out of the woodwork. But thankfully, I've begun just blocking people on the Twitch chat to thus not be distracted by rampant stupidity. But as noted yesterday, there's probably around 8, was what I was told. Around 8 people are already under WWE ID deals. And this has been in place for several months now, the beginning of this program. And everybody's asking, like, well, what happens with this? What happens with that? So essentially, the guys with WWE ID deals at this point are free agents. And so they're able to wrestle where they want. They can do jobs. They're free agents. But the situation is, if, for example, AEW comes knocking, or TNA, or whoever, if they get an offer from another company, because they are under ID deals, they have to report this to WWE. And at that point, WWE can either say, all right, we're offering you a full-time developmental deal. You're moving to Florida or eventually Vegas. Or they can say, you're free to negotiate with these other companies and sign there. So essentially this ID deal, you know, the wrestlers get a small amount of money to work on their appearance and everything. But also, WWE has right of first refusal for contract offers. But they are free agents other than the ID designation. They can wrestle wherever they want. They can do jobs. But contract offers have to be brought up with the WWE. And hey, whoa, who's here?
Doing jobs. No
Finally.
Comprende.
Finally. Are you, don't tell me.
Yes.
What's his name? Dang it. What was that guy's name in WCW that had the mask with the goggles on it? Who was that?
Cyclope?
No, not Cyclope.
Who had the goggles?
Who are you? Are you Juventud?
No, it was an old Rey Mysterio here.
Oh, it's an old Rey Mysterio
Yes.
mask?
Yes.
Rey Mysterio has more masks than Mil Mascaris, whose literal gimmick is man of 1,000 masks.
Ray's got 1,000,000 masks.
Much better, Mike. That's much
Thank you.
better. Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, and you know, you made some money by not having to work for 10 minutes here.
That's true.
You missed a lot of very exciting news about injuries and such.
Ooh, no, I don't want to hear anything more about injuries. Thank you.
But when we come back, you're going to be able to talk a little bit about the Super Calo. Thank you.
Ah!
I thought you were Super Calo.
Oh, man.
Whatever happened to him?
I don't know, but did Super Calo? No, he didn't. Who was the one? It was Silver King, right? Who won the pinata on a pole match and then stole Lex Luger's cab?
I think that might have been Silver King.
Ah.
All right. Back in a moment, we'll do Dynamite, and then we have a special guest, Observer Live.
There's 1, 2. Now he's got Bryan Alvarez. He whips him into the corner hard. Adam Firestorm following up, catches a boot to the face. Bryan out. Bryan Alvarez with another hard shot to the head. 1, 2. This is the most aggressive I've seen Bryan Alvarez today here in Portland Wrestling. Now he's got his knee across the throat. He's choking him, LC.
Well, it's like this week Alvarez has something to prove, brother. Something to prove to his sweet little lady over there.
Of course, Adam Firestone with a big win over Black Dragon last week. Looking for another one here. There's a sunset flip. Is he going to go down? Yes, he is. Over he goes. 1, 2, 3. It is all over. Adam Firestorm with the victory over beautiful Bryan Alvarez here in Portland Wrestling. Now out Bryan Alvarez firing away with a boot. Action continues after the bell. Goes for the back body drop. No! Face first plant by Adam Firestorm. Your winner once, looks like he'll be your winner twice. Action continues. There's a whip into the far corner. Adam Firestorm follows with a spinning kick. LC, I think Bryan Alvarez has bit off more than he could chew tonight. Miss Rent-to-Own really disgusted over in the corner. Adam Firestorm not done. There's a lion sold on top. He hooks him again. 1, 2. 2.5. I thought we had a 3 count earlier in this match, LC. I was wrong.
I
I'm
can't
sorry.
believe it. I thought Youth Gone Wild was just adding a little salt to the wound. I thought Alvarez was Alvarez and a 2-time loser, brother.
Well, Mark Watson's hand must have stopped just short of the 3 count. And these eyes of mine need glasses, because I thought I saw a 3 count. Bryan Alvarez going up top.
Oh, well, forget about your cataracts, brother. Up and over he goes.
Nobody home. Adam Firestorm back in control, playing a bit of possum. He's climbing up top. Miss Rento-Onato really upset. There he goes. Swamp
Oh, and that one hit.
There's a hook to leg. 1, 2, 3. Now it's all over.
A 2-time loser. And does the LC have to look after Miss Rento-Onato tonight, baby?
There's Adam Firestorm, your winner in this match. Once, twice, 3 times, it didn't matter. Bryan Alvarez not up to it. Miss Rento-Onato absolutely disgusted with it. Mark Watson explaining to him it was a 3 count this time. No hook to leg. Fair and square, Adam Firestorm, your winner here on Portland Wrestling. Fans will be right back with after a message from our sponsors.
Whoever's doing the tweets today, put up a shot of me and Mike. I need a new one put up on Twitter. There we go. Oh, that's a new mask. Now you're Mystico.
Yes, and you know what?
Wow.
I have an announcement to make. I don't know if people have heard this or not, have seen this or not, but I am the NWA historic middleweight champion.
I thought you vacated that.
Exactly, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to take this belt and dump it in this trash can.
Oh.
Right there.
Horrible. Horrible.
I'm ready for more action in MLW and New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Brian Rose made a great comment, which is that right now it's Ricky Morton and Mystico, which is an incredible tag team.
It is.
He said Rey Mysterio, but I guess that was in the last segment.
That was before. Yeah.
Either way, that would be an incredible tag team.
Actually, right now, it was before it was Rey Mysterio and Bobby Eaton. Now it's Mystico and
Bobby Eaton.
Yeah, that's kind of what you look like.
I don't know about Bobby Eaton. This is definitely more a Ricky Morton, I think. All right, we got to talk about some highlights from the Dynamite show. Let's start with the best thing on the show, which was Young Bucks versus Private Party. Tag team titles. Private Party must split up forever if they don't win. And my God, Speaking of Ricky Morton, it's going to seem like an odd tie-in, but I must put myself over. Myself and Filthy Tom wrestled the Rock and Roll Express.
You did.
That's right. We wrestled the Rock and Roll Express.
Ricky and Robert.
And granted, we didn't win,
No.
but for 15 minutes of that Black Label Pro show, we turned back the clock. And I bring it up because I watched this match, and listen, I was there at Wrestle Dream, okay? I was there in the crowd. I watched the Young Bucks versus Private Party at Wrestle Dream, and it was like a really good match, but when it was over, it was like, it was a really good match, but was it like an all-timer, like an all-time great Young Bucks? It was really good. I think I gave it 4 stars or something. It was like good. It was like really good, but there was just something about it that it kept it from that level. Maybe it was a crowd. I don't know what it was. My God, this match last night. Oh my God. I thought this was way better than the pay-per-view match. And granted, it's funny because there were 6,500 people, 7,000, somewhere around that in the Tacoma Dome. But, they were cheering and everything, but it wasn't like a barn burner. They had 3,200 people, I believe, at the show last night, which was a good crowd for a Dynamite. And these people were just going nuts during this match. And they just had incredible heat from about 5 minutes in. And they're doing all of these crazy spots. Everybody looks great. It's probably the best match Private Party's ever had in their lives. And they finally win the titles, and the place just freaking exploded. And it was like, for 20 minutes, it's like 2019 all over again. Like, this was 2019 AEW stuff right here. Just an incredible match. I mean, everybody looked great. Crowds going haywire. It was awesome. Absolutely awesome. And then the Bucks give the belts to Private Party, and they leave. And then they pack their bags, and they leave the building. And Chris Daniels is trying to stop them, and they're like, nope, this place is pure chaos. We came back and wanted to try to make this place. Nobody wanted to listen to us. We're out of here. We're working from home. So, I don't know. They could be back in a week. But I watched this thing, and it was like, they're gone for a while. And it's kind of interesting because it's like there are 2 different universes in AEW. There's like this Jon Moxley universe where he's trying to take over the company and like all these baby faces are just getting murdered every week. And then there's like the other half of AEW where like none of this even exists. Like Swerve's there, but he's dealing with the Hurt Business and this and that. And the Young Bucks are kind of right in the middle. They don't want to be involved, but like they're at least acknowledging that this is going on. And I watched it and I thought, okay, well, they're going to go home for a while. And then the day's going to come where they return to try to save AEW as babyfaces. But the problem is, there's another universe where they've got an issue with Kenny Omega, who's going to be coming back soon. And he ain't coming back as a heel. So I'm not sure what's going to happen in terms of what the Young Bucks are going to be doing when they come back. Are they coming back to feud as heels with Omega? Or are they going to come back and reunite and like be conquering babyfaces? I have no idea. But I think they're gone for a while. But that was the best thing on the show by miles.
Easily. And even if you didn't like the post-match stuff when it came to the deal afterwards when they left, that's fine. But it was by far the best thing on the show. And you're right. It was probably the best Private Party match that they've had since the last time they faced the Young Bucks. Or really back in 2019 when they debuted and actually, came on the scene against the Young Bucks. And for Matt Jackson to have a separated shoulder, and granted, there are different, or Nick Jackson, to have a separated shoulder, again, granted, there's different severities to this, and I don't think it's too bad, but the fact that he's been working like that, and the match was that good, and you really wouldn't know.
Both matches, the pay-per-view match as well.
Yeah, so hopefully he didn't make it any worse. It's something that he's probably going to be out a couple weeks for. That's one of the reasons I'm sure they're kind of stepping away right now. But you're right. It's going to be interesting to see how all of these worlds collide together and then move the entire product forward, because we are going to need to have some sort of tie-in here at some point, because once Orange Cassidy is out of the way, sure, we have Moxley and Darby Allin, but what about the rest of that group and how it fits into everything else? At some point, you figure they're going to have to come across the Hurt Business, and that's going to be interesting.
The thing with I don't know exactly how bad his separated shoulder is, but when I separated both of mine, and when I separated the one that was the worst, like I couldn't even lift the bar, like I couldn't bench the bar, which is 45 pounds. Not one time, I couldn't bench it one time. It hurt so bad, but like I could do normal things in life, and I believe because I remember because at the pay-per-view, Matt got pinned, okay. And I had somebody ask me, they were like, does Nick ever do jobs? Because it's always Matt. And I had noticed that Matt was usually the guy that did jobs, but I knew that he wasn't the only one because I remembered there was a time when Nick got pinned, and I remembered it because it was unusual, okay? So, Matt did the job in the pay-per-view match, and I was asking around, like, someone's asking me this question, like, how come... And as it turns out, Nick was supposed to do the job in the pay-per-view match, but the finish they had, he couldn't lift the guy because of his shoulder. And so Matt ended up doing it, and he ended up getting pinned. But if you watched last night, Nick did his job. So anyway, there's no conspiracy. Nick does do jobs for the Young Bucks, but for whatever reason, I think Matt really likes doing jobs for some reason.
And what's going to be interesting too is what role will Jack Perry play as things go along, because it seems to me that absolutely you get Omega back together with the Bucks and you have a force that's going to try to fight back against this group. Obviously you would have Ibushi tied into that, and you have Okada there, who everybody wants to cheer anyway. But when it comes to Jack Perry, would he be a part of that, or is he more served maybe being towards Moxley or a line closer to Moxley, or as a loner? What about Hangman Page as well too? That's going to be interesting to see how they might fit in a mix where once Omega comes back.
And then the main event was Shelton Benjamin and Swerve. And if you've listened to interviews with Swerve, I mean, the guy loves Shelton Benjamin. And if you have not listened to interviews with Swerve, all you have to do is watch this match to realize he loves Shelton Benjamin, because Shelton took like 95% of this match. I mean, Swerve just sold and sold and sold. And Shelton looked great. He's just throwing this dude around. This is like one of the best working 49-year-olds you'll ever see. You'd never know he was 49 years old if you showed some rando this match. And Swerve did eventually win with the Swerve Stomp. And then, yes, Bobby Lashley debuted. Got a big pop, came down to the ring, and the Hurt Business murdered poor Prince Nana and Swerve. And I presume this was literally the exact angle. I can't say for sure, but this is my presumption. I presume this was the exact thing they were going to do in Tacoma, because they were going to do this in Tacoma. I don't know if it was this exact, but the idea was they were going to kill Swerve in Tacoma. And then eventually it was sort of like, wait a second, we're killing Bryan Danielson in Tacoma. We're going to kill Swerve also in Tacoma? And so the decision was made, no, we will not kill all the hometown baby faces in this town. And they held it off until this show. And honestly, Tacoma was Swerve's first match back, his first appearance back, I believe, since he lost the title. And so to be gone for like weeks and weeks and weeks, and on his first appearance back in his hometown getting murdered, I think this was way better. He got to come back. He got to be victorious. He got to do some stuff on TV, and now he gets killed. And I think it was better, MVP showed up first. Few weeks, Shelton Benjamin shows up, and you don't need Lashley showing up immediately. Several more weeks, then Lashley shows up. If you remember, like, the original NWO, it wasn't Hall and Nash showing up at the same time. Hall showed up first. A little while later, Nash shows up. A little while later, we get the famous third man. So anyway, back in a moment, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. Very happy today to be joined by our old friend, Aria Whitner. We got a lot to talk about, including a new book, which appears to be the first in a series of about 900 books. Aria, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, and yeah, it's about the first of about 704. I'm sorry if you just heard a motorcycle go up the street behind me.
That's all right. Yes, you have written book one of a series, 40 years of pay-per-view, and this is 1985 through 1990. And the book just came out a couple of days ago. It's available on Amazon.com. And what in God's name possessed you to watch 40 years of pay-per-views?
So it was actually started about a year ago. I realized that 2025 was the 40-year anniversary of when Vince McMahon started putting wrestling pay-per-views on, and it just kind of snowballed from there. It was originally going to be a podcasting project, but then I realized nobody listens to my podcast now, so why would they listen to it then? So since I came to that realization after I'd already written like 20 or 30 shows, I'm like, let's turn this into a book. And here we are. And I released it Monday, the day before my 40th birthday, which was the goal.
The day before your 40th birthday.
Yes.
That means you are now
old.
40.
Yes, it does.
Golly.
See, my goal for a long time was just to make it to 48, and then I got there, and man, it's all gravy after that.
Your goal was to make it to 40?
It was a tough. I had some stretches there.
Wow. So
Yeah.
40 years of pay-per-view, meaning this all begins the year you were born.
The year after. I was born in 84, but yes.
I see. Okay, I guess that's how birthdays work now, doesn't it? All right. So what is the idea here? Are we talking all pay-per-views? So eventually, are we going to get like Heroes of Wrestling and the weekly pay-per-views for TNA?
Yes.
Oh my God!
In this book is the AWA Super Clash 3 pay-per-view. That's the only non-WWF/NWA show from that period. But the next one, which is tentatively 91 through 94, you have the LPWA show, you have Herb Abrams' UWF. You have a whole bunch of wonderful non-Big Two pay-per-views coming up down the line.
So you are going to review every single pay-per-view from any company that has ever existed in professional wrestling.
Collide, and you got that one.
Yes. With an asterisk on the every single pay-per-view ever, because there has to be a limit somewhere. So, like, no pay-per-views, because I'd be here until, my grandkids would need to do this.
So it must air on traditional pay-per-view.
Correct.
All right.
And it has to have some degree of a national following, or at least national clearance. Like WrestleMania 1, it was on a handful of shows, or a handful of pay-per-view providers, but it was so few that it doesn't even register. So I note that in the book that I'm not going to review WrestleMania 1, like maybe in some future project, but I don't consider that a pay-per-view.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's going to drive a lot of people crazy, a lot of completionists.
Oh, my friend and co-host Trey, it's driven him crazy already.
Wow. Well, we have to have rules, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Now, do you plan on including like UWFI into that too, or big, shoulder wrestling pay-per-views that were a big deal at the time?
As long as it aired in the United States, either live or did a good job of pretending to be live, like SummerSlam 92 or UWFI, they'll be on the list.
So now the title of the book is 40 Years of Pay-Per-View, Book 1. So I guess that means you have decided that the cutoff is going to be 2025? 4?
Honestly, I never really thought that far. I just thought it was a cute title.
I just ruined your title.
or you've forced me to like put out like 10 books or 12 books in the next year and a half.
I've forced an end date. Yes. 40 years of pay-per-view, 85 through 90. God. How many pay-per-views are in this first book?
30.
30. So, oh my God.
It was originally going to be 85 through 89, and then the next one was going to be 90 through 94. But that 90 through 94 period has a load of shows, so I cut off 90 and added it onto the first the first book.
Okay, I mean this with all due respect. Did you think this out when you started?
Yes-ish.
Okay. Because you mentioned how many pay-per-views are in book one?
30.
Okay, that's like a year nowadays, right?
It's a year in 2000 because it's between WWF, WCW, and ECW. There's 31.
Oh my God! So you're gonna have to go year by year here pretty soon.
I haven't quite gone that far, but yeah, it's especially in that 99 2000 period. It's probably going to be 12 to 18 months.
Well, you got to think about this, too. Once you get to the weekly pay-per-views with TNA, you're going to have to do like 3 books per year.
See, for that, I'm thinking of just doing the TNA shows as one book. And
so
then,
all of the pay-per-views are just one book, like the TNA pay-per-view years?
Just the TNA weekly shows as one book, and then WWE and whomever else from like 2002 to 2004-ish.
I'm trying to think if I would want to read a book that just recapped all of the TNA weekly pay-per-views. There's part of me that there's like, I would never, ever read that book. And then there's that other part of me that thinks, I have to read that book. Wow.
I have actually been watching them for my Wednesday show with my co-host Cindy, and we've almost reached the point where you and Vinny and Sean gave up. And at least the last 2 weeks have been pretty good, but the next week is the week that you gave up, so I'm kind of curious just how bad it is.
Oh, God.
Aria, I was a big boxing fan my entire life, and I was always fascinated with pay-per-view and closed circuit and things like that. I've done a lot of research on it, so when the idea came for TNA to do weekly pay-per-views, even though it was found out to be a complete disaster of an idea, I was interested in it, especially because there really was no other American wrestling at the time unless you were a tape trader or buying VHS tapes, DVDs. So TNA was actually an interesting thing, a concept to me at the start. But one of the things I also liked about pay-per-view was finding the numbers and things like that. Are you going to have that added in as far as buy rates and dollars and maybe some of the crazy things that happen? Obviously, more crazy things happened in boxing when it came to pay-per-views and putting them on, but wrestling, there's been plenty of those cases as well. Are you going to give a little bit of a backstory and some stats when it comes to these pay-per-views?
Oh, definitely. Every show, it's not just like me saying, oh, WrestleMania 4, first match, Battle Royal. No, it's like, WrestleMania 4, here's all the crazy stuff happening in the world that's happened since the last WWF pay-per-view. Here's how this show is done and how it compares to the last show they did and the last WrestleMania and any fun little story. And I bring up WrestleMania 4 just because my favorite passage that I wrote in the book was the WrestleMania 4 passage, because that's the show that went head-to-head with the Clash of the Champions. And I basically wrote, on this day, it was one of the greatest shows of all time. It created a brand new star. It had some of the best matches you'll ever see. And this is the story of the other show that happened that day.
Brutal. And then you rate all the matches, right? But not on a 5-star scale.
Yeah. Correct. I've always preferred the 0 to 10 scale myself.
The granny scale.
Yes, pretty much.
Yes.
And I tell you, like, if it makes you feel better, just cut it in half and say that's how many stars it is.
Interesting.
You know?
I guess you could do it that way.
Like, at the end of the day, if you disagree with my opinion about how good a match or a show was, that's great. Like, life would be pretty boring if we all had the same opinion.
Now, let me ask you this question, because a lot of I don't even know what age it would be. Maybe somewhat younger than us. A lot of fans I guess younger than me, they think of like, the 80s, NWA was awesome and WWF sucked. But, I've gone back and watched a lot of that mid-80s stuff. And a lot of Hulk Hogan matches, like on Saturday Night's Main Event, and it's not that bad. Some of it is bad, but some of the stuff with like Hogan until about like 1988, he would just kill it in these main events. Not so much the Andre match, but like other matches. And you had Randy Savage and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Cowboy Bob Orton, and there were some freaking good matches in the mid-'80s in WWF. But people kind of remember the really horrible stuff, and I think start to fixate on the real late 80s and early 90s when there was a lot of terrible stuff.
Oh, definitely. And at the end of the book, I put the top 10 overall ratings of all the shows during this period, and 3 of the top 5 shows are WWF shows. And so it's not it's all just going to be NWA shows. It's like the WWF had a lot of good stuff, just it's easier to remember the bad stuff sometimes, or it's easier to paint it with a giant brush. And I know you're bringing up the WWF, but Lex Luger, he is so underrated during this period, it's not even funny. And I know he's wrestling Flair and Steamboat and Pillman, et cetera, but you know something? It takes 2 to have a great match. It takes 1 to have a good match, but 2 to have a great match.
Well, it's funny. I have watched a fair amount of mid-'80s NWA, and I have rewatched all of the Monday Night Wars. And I really haven't rewatched 1990 through 1994 NWA WCW, but I thought the same thing. Luger always got kind of a bad rap, but I watched him during the Monday Night Wars, and this guy was so over. Yeah. And they never pulled the trigger on him. They would give him a big win, and then they would take it away, and they would focus on other people. And it was dude, this guy is he's right on the cusp. And they never pulled the trigger. And yeah, watching a lot of the, I watched a lot of the mid-'80s NWA, and I'm waiting to see horrible Lex Luger. But some of his interviews were kind of boring. He'd go on forever. But as far as matches, he wasn't bad at all. In fact, he was often good.
No, and I think it was the motorcycle wreck, and also just in general going to the WWF where he realized he could get by doing a lot less.
I think one of the other issues with Luger, too, in the moment when we had Tully and Arn and Flair and Sting was at a different... Luger unfortunately, he never got the shot in the NWA because when he should have won the belt after Sting got hurt, Flair didn't want to get the belt to him, and that's probably when he should have won it. And, yeah, as you go into 89, he turns heel on Steamboat. He was actually really, really good until pretty much the time he left to go to the WWF.
All right, stand by. Back in a moment with more Wrestling Observer Live. Man, everybody here in the chat says this Lucha's gimmick's really working for you, Mike. You may be the next Excalibur.
Don't insult me like that. Although, again, covering up my face more, that's what it's about for these people. I do look better when you don't see me.
We are joined by Aria Whitner. 40 years of pay-per-view, book 1 of 89, 1985 through 1990, available on Amazon.com. It says here paperback. Is it only paperback?
No, you can also get it on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited.
Oh, wow, I have Kindle Unlimited. Wow, you'll need Kindle Unlimited to read this entire series.
Yes, you do. And by the way, since I've just discovered the economics of Amazon, if you get it on Kindle Unlimited and hate it, do me a favor and just flip through the entire books because you get paid by the number of pages people read.
Wow.
Ooh.
I did not know that.
Neither did I until I had to look it up.
I'm going to write a really long book with one word on each page. That's my idea. Get some plugs in here for your book and everything else you're doing.
But yeah, it's 40 years of pay-per-view, book 1, 1985 through 1990. It's available on Amazon. It's one of the, I don't want to say best-selling, but it's one of the hottest new releases right now in the pro wrestling market. If you want to hear what else I have to say, check out the Something Else Podcast Network, available on almost all your favorite streaming platforms. Just don't listen to it at work because we tend to go off on some R-rated tangents.
You mean don't listen with speaker on?
Pretty much, yes.
Well, don't worry. Nobody listening to any of these shows ever listens on speaker. It would be a bad idea. Aria, I want to thank you so much for doing the show today. Best of luck, and we'll see you about 92 times in the future when new books come out. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, and of course, thanks everybody for listening. Have a happy Halloween, everybody! We'll talk to you next time, Wrestling Observer Live.